Good morning, sir. Good morning, classmates. So, in this topic, we will discuss about the Unit 1, Lesson 4, which is the subject and content. I will be discuss about the subject, and the content will be discussed by Limpin Rinaldo, which is my partner in this report. So, let's move on to the learning outcomes. At the end of the lesson, the students must have differentiate representational art and non-representational art, discuss the difference between artwork, subject, and its content, identify the subject matter and content of specific examples of art, and enumerate the source of the subject of some of the most recognizable works of art in Philippine art history. One of the major highlights that is false of individual engagement with an artwork is the notion that in order to appreciate it, one must be able to extract a specific image, isolate the artist or maker's intention, and unearth a particular meaning. Failure to do so automatically implies a failure of comprehension and therefore failure of experience. However, regulates art engagement and therefore appreciation to the very few who had training and instruction in producing and in reading art. But this is not should be the case. Let's move on to the perception. The primary stage of engaging with art, the beginning of engagement is through looking at the artwork. However, like any tool, it is but one component. What makes a difference is the awareness in the process of looking where subjectivity is essential in navigating through the artwork. Now, what is subjectivity? Subjectivity, it is illustrated in the way that selective perception renders one or two details more prominent than others, prompting the viewer to focus on some details as essential or as standouts. So subjectivity, it is remains this is refers on how someone's judgment is shaped by our personal opinion and feelings instead of outside influences, and it is based our personal opinions rather than an agreed facts. Example, a painting, it might be beautiful to one person and ugly another person, but the material objects remains unchanged. So that is the subjectivity. Now let's move on in viewing art. There are clues that mediate between the artwork and the viewer, allowing the viewer to more easily comprehend what he is seeing. Let's move on to the three basic components of a work of art, which is the subject, content, the form. Now we have the subject. Subject, the visual focus or the image that may be extracted from examining the artwork. Or we have here the clue word, which is the what. So subject, it is refers to the main idea that is presented in the artwork. So the subject in art is basically the essence of a piece. So in general, subject may be taught as the what in a piece, but the most common subject of art is include people. That is the subject. Now let's move on to the content. Content, the meaning that is communicated by the artist or the artwork, and the clue words is the why. Context refers to what is being depicted and might be helpful in deriving a basic meaning, and it is appears in the visual in several forms, all of which may be figurative or realistic or abstract, which is distorted. That is the content. The form, the development and figuration of the artwork, how the elements of the medium or material are put together, the keywords is the how. Form is one of the elements of visual art, which is pertains to the way that a shape or physical configuration occupies copy. So, the subject, form, content have always been three basic components of a work of art. And they are weird in a way that is inspirable. So in general, subject may be thought of as what the topic focus or image. Form has the how of the development of the work, composition, or the substantiation. And the content has the why, the artist's intention, communication, or meaning behind the work. Now let's move to the activity. Activity which is think, pair, and share. Look at the painting by artist David Bailey entitled Self-Portrait with Baneta's Symbols. List down everything that you see within the four corners of the work. List as many items as you can see in 3 minutes. Think, pair, and share. And this is the painting of David Bailey, which is the self-portrait of Baneta's Symbols. Yes. And with your statement, discuss and compare the items you listed. Based on your answers, write an assumption about what the painting means. This is the painting of David Bailey. Okay. Now let's move on. In the science, experimentation is the key to proving a hypothesis or a larger theory. In the arts, there are observable qualities that the artwork holds that will point to its subject and sometimes even to its content. In order to flesh out what the subject of the artwork is, it is important to first look at the constituent figures that are perceivable on the surface of the canvas or the sculpture and the manner in which the artist choose to depict those figures. From this, the type of subject can then be inferred. Let's move on the types of the subject. So what is the type of subject? The types of the subject is representational art and non-representational art. Let's have a representational art. These types of art have subject that refer to objects or events occurring in the real world, and also termed figurative art because the figures depicted are easy to make out and decipher. So, receptional art is depict any identifiable or objects, series of objects and their physical appearance in reality. And it is also referred to as figurative art. Yes, being that is derived from real object source. We have the examples of the representational art is Mona Lisa by Leonardo da Vinci. It is also termed a figurative art because the figures depicted are easy to make out and decipher. That is representational art. Now, let's move on to the non-representational art. Art forms that do not make a reference to the real world, whether it is one person, place, thing, or even a particular event. It is stripped down to visual elements such as shapes, lines, and colors that are employed to translate a particular feeling, emotion, and even concept. Also termed non-figurative art. Non-figurative art is often used as another way to refer to abstract art. But there is a distinct difference between the two. Fundamentally, non-representational art is the work does not represent or depict a being, place, or thing. Now, this is the example of non-representational art. Number 1A by Jackson Pollock, known for his action painting. Why we call non-representational art this? It is because said that forms that do not make a reference to the real world, whether person, place, thing, or even a particular event. And this is also termed non-figurative art. That is one representational examples painting by Jackson Pollock, known for his action paintings. Now, representational art and the abstract is. One source of confusion is the notion that non-representational art is the same as abstract art. This is essential to discuss because it is introduced the fact that representational art and non-representational art is not clear-cut divide, rather they exist in a spectrum. That is the representational art and the non-representational together with abstract art. The abstract art is the center between the representational art and the non-representational art. That is. Let's proceed to the, this is the example of abstract. Head of a Woman by Pablo Picasso. Cat metal that is hined on a metal base. That is. Next, as a guide, an artwork depending on the degree of distortion or abstraction may be adjudged as leaning more toward one over the other. The abstract art is in itself departure from reality, but the extent of the departure determines whether it has reached the end of the spectrum, which is non-representational art, a complete severance from the world. Well, let's proceed to, this is Wassily Kandinsky. This is not Vasily. This is Wassily Kandinsky. Wassily Kandinsky is a Russian artist and a proponent of non-representational art and used it with the music. Thus, most of his works are inspired by music and are entitled as impression, improvisation, and composition. Wassily Kandinsky said that all of the art, abstract painting is the most difficult. It demands that you know how to draw well, that have a heightened sensitivity or for composition and for colors, and that you be a true poet. And this is the last essential. Wassily Kandinsky said that Abstract painting is the most difficult. Why? Because it demands that you know how to draw well, that have a heightened sensitivity for composition. Next. Okay, let's move on to the source and kinds of subjects. Source and kinds of subjects. For non-representational art is a higher level of perceptiveness and insight might be required to fully grasp by the feeling, emotion, or concept behind the work. For representational art, it is easier to infer the subject matter because from the figure depicted in the artwork, there is already a suggestion as to its implication. Now the source of the subjects. It's nature. Example, Nature by Dave Evan von Auwers, which is Wheatfields near Uverns by Vincent van Gogh. This is the example of source of the subjects. Landscape near Monte Carlo by Claude Monet. The Hay Harvest by Camille Pissarro. Still Life with School by Paul Cézanne. And Chichester Canal by G.M.W. Turner. Planting Rice by Fernando Amorsolo. And Pasay Beach by Fabian de la Rosa. Greek and Roman mythology. Judeo-Christian tradition. Yes, that's also the subject. Sacred Oriental text. And the history. In the history of art, it is important to remember that the source and kind of subjects were not merely a product of the artist's inclination and choice. And a closer examination of the various art movements and artworks created within those movements will indicate that notions of freedom and independence, which are presumed to be enjoyed by artists, were not without limits or restrictions. For instance, a particular kind of subject and the way it is visually translated may be traced in relation to the art patrons, those who commission the artworks, the favored artistic style and canons, and more importantly, the norms and trends prevailing in the artist milieu. And that is the subject that I discussed. And the content will be discussed by Rinaldo Limpin. That's all. Thank you.